Heard both sides of the political argument over President Trump's plan to build a border wall. This impasse is paralyzing our federal government. This is now day 34 of the shutdown.
But there are a handful of ranchers in southern New Mexico who believe their voices have not been heard in all this. They live on the border, and they feel ignored by politicians in Washington and Santa Fe. 4 investigator KRIS Ramirez went to far southwest New Mexico in Hidalgo County to give them that voice.
Cacti outnumber humans 1,000,000 to 1 here, and sunsets and cattle make up the scenery for drivers on the long stretches of highway. Hidalgo County sits in New Mexico's boot heel, wedged between Mexico and Arizona. The county shares 87 miles of its boundary with Mexico, and there are no border walls here.
We have to get the word out that we have a crisis down here.
When ranchers who live in the boot heel learned we were in the area, they formed an impromptu town hall to tell us what they are seeing.
Not getting any better, it's getting worse, and now there's an influx of people, so you know, we know something's going to happen every day we go out.
Is there anybody here who's been victimized by who you think is an undocumented immigrant?
Well, we've had a vehicle stolen.
They've had bundles of weed, coke, and carrying heavy artillery.
The worst part of it is we had an employee kidnapped. And that was probably the worst night of my entire life until we got him back.
It's getting to the point where these confrontations are getting more and more aggressive and more violent.
Here's the problem as they see it. Right now, I am in Mexico, and what separates this country from our country is this barbed wire fence. So obviously, if somebody had an interest in crossing into the United States, it's really not all that difficult. And believe it or not, this is actually a gate that opens, and it's held together with some wire ties. And ranchers who live in this area say this gate is frequently opened so that drug smugglers can just drive their drugs right into the United States. Some of the border in Hidalgo County is separated by these Normandy barriers, but much of the international border is separated by barbed wire fence, and people are crossing them. Just last week, this group of 247 migrants turned themselves in near the Antelope Wells crossing. U.S. Customs and Border Protection stated unscrupulous, organized smugglers are exploiting the boot heel area and the proximity to the border to move large groups of people. 2 nights after that, Customs and Border Protection sent us this night video showing migrants jumping over the Normandy barriers. For the ranchers, it's the drug smugglers that cause the real problems.
We've had houses, their cars broke into and things taken out of them.
When a crime occurs on ranch land, they call the sheriff's office for help. But the sheriff admits help is not always available.
The citizens aren't protected. We need to have more manpower.
The sheriff's office only has 4 deputies. 4 deputies to cover nearly 3,500 square miles.
With my 4 officers and, with days off, vacation time, sick leave, we can't cover 24 hours a day. I mean, we're basically 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. at night, and that's the best I can do. And in my honest opinion, it's not fair to the citizens of the county.
And when a deputy is down here at the border, that leaves the rest of the county unmanned. The situation is so desperate, the county manager wrote this letter to the governor and Senators Martin Heinrich and Tom Udall. She writes, "We feel there is an imminent threat to the safety and welfare of our citizens in Hidalgo County. Resources such as medical, law enforcement, and sanitation are amongst those most needed. We are begging for your assistance."
The calls I get from citizens, they state there are people in their backyard, that they're seeing several on a daily basis, that people are breaking into their homes, stealing different items, and just the safety factor. They feel like they're not safe, like they're not protected.
Ranchers and Hidalgo County officials hope the state can help fund more deputies, and they want Santa Fe politicians to see what they are seeing. In early January, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham visited the Santa Teresa port of entry and said this.
While I've been to this area of the border many times, I haven't seen anything that indicates that we have an emergent crisis here at the border. And that's important to continue to talk to New Mexicans about. It's also, I think, really important to continue to talk to the nation about.
Was that offensive to you?
It is offensive. It's very offensive. the asinine idea that these politicians spout out that, oh, our border is secure, there's not a crisis here. For them, there's not. When they live in Washington or they live up there in Santa Fe or only come down here to secure ports, it's a crock. And it's absolutely insulting to the people that actually live down here.
In response to these ranchers' thoughts, the governor's spokesman sent us a statement stating in part, there is not an emergency crisis at the border that warrants the asinine and anti-American, anti-immigration tactics endorsed by the president. One of her key priorities is making data-driven decisions instead of political decisions, and the chance to begin to identify what is working and what is not. These ranchers don't really care about the politics of the border.
It's not about Republicans or Democrats. It's our lives here.
For them, they believe better barriers are needed, in addition to more Border Patrol agents and better technology to stop the inflow of illegal drugs and people. In Hidalgo County, KRIS Ramirez, 4 Investigates.
And that letter asking for help the county sent to the governor and our U.S. senators. We are told Senators Heinrich and Udall did respond, promising to meet soon with county leaders to address the issues.